I sing the body electric. This is the first line of Walt Whitman's poem of the same name. And this is a great poem, not for just the sentiment of the poem, but because of the way that Walt uses language. It'd be really easy for him to say, you know, I feel good and I feel like saying I feel good, but Walt Whitman has used his extensive vocabulary to make something mediocre into something beautiful and something grand, you know, by saying that he feels like singing, the physical embodiment of just how good he feels. You know, I sing the body electric. And this is the power of poetry. And by writing some ourselves, we can open ourselves up to better expressing ourselves and talking to others and communicating our ideas and our emotions to other people. Personally, I have a collection of poems that I've penned myself, and it's a very nice means to catharsis for me. Like, these are poems that nobody else has read, and that's fine, because a lot of times poetry is just about getting it out, you know, making yourself feel better, getting those emotions off your chest. And everybody has stress in life, whether it be children or school or work. And writing poetry is a really good way to kind of get that stress off of your chest and kind of express yourself in a creative and imaginative way. And I hope to persuade you guys by looking at the impact that writing can have on your social communication skills and the therapeutic value of writing some poetry. So writing poetry helps foster good communication skills with others. In his 1931 speech to the Amherst College, Education by Poetry was the title of his speech. Robert Frost talked about why writing and reading poetry can help you in life. So what he said in his speech was that in everyday life, we're all kind of judged, and we all judge things, you know. We pick up something and we judge how big it is, we judge what's inside, we judge, is this gonna be good? Is this gonna taste good? Does it look good? Does it smell good? And we do that with other people as well. And what Robert Frost was saying is that poetry, by reading it and writing it, can help us to better judge. You know, because when we look at poetry, we try to judge, is this a good metaphor? Is this a good way of saying this? What does this mean? And if we learn to hone our skills by reading and writing poetry, we can use those skills in everyday life, and we can decipher turns of phrases and metaphors so that we can more clearly interpret what another person is saying, and we can better deliver our message, you know, back to Walt Whitman. Instead of saying, I feel good, say, I sing the body electric. You know, you can really exemplify your point. One of the quotes from his speech that I love is, what I am pointing out is that unless you are at home in the metaphor, unless you have had your proper poetical education in the metaphor, you are not safe everywhere. And I like that quote because we never talk in just mundane words and straightforward. We never say what we really mean. Communication between humans is all about metaphors and all about turns of phrases and similes and all that good stuff. And so I really like that quote. There's also an article from Bioscience from Stephanie R. Januchowski Hartley and her associates, and I'm sure I butchered her name, poor lady. And so they did some research on writing poetry and how this can better help scientists to develop skills that can help them in their work. And what they found is by writing poetry, not only does it help them in their work, but it helps to express their findings and their ideas and theories as well. So one of the things that the article touched on was when the scientists were working on a problem, what they would do is they would get stuck because they had that laser focus on the issue and their vision of the issue kind of narrowed. And so by taking a moment to step back and put that problem into their subconscious and just let it be, they could use their creative conscious to work on a poem, and so their brain is still active, still going. And the study called this, well, this is awkward that I'm standing here and reading this, the incubation period. So basically the original problem, that original laser focused task they were on, kind of sits in their brain, and it allows it time for your brain to relax. It doesn't have that firm stranglehold on that idea anymore, but your brain is still actively working, still being creative. And so when you step back and go back into that problem, your brain is much more receptive to working on it now. It's like trying to look at the Mona Lisa through a microscope. You're going to have no idea it's the Mona Lisa. But when you step back and relax, you're able to see the picture. And so when these scientists were able to step back and write some poetry, it really helped them to go back to their task and be able to have a better and new look at it. And like I said, also by writing poetry, once they had their findings, they could communicate with their colleagues a lot better and in a much more articulate way. And in another article, How Poetry Can Heal by Dr. Diana Raab, she discussed how writing poetry encourages a certain connectiveness between people and a sense of community between ourselves and others. And the way that we can do this is because when we're writing poetry, we don't want to just pick the most bland words. We sit there and we try to find the most articulate words. So when we're communicating with others and we've written poetry, it's the same thing. We need to take time and choose our words carefully and present our idea in the most articulate way and the most tactful way a lot of times. But writing poetry is not just about communication skills and what we can do with others. It's a lot of introspection. And so writing poetry can be a great means for therapy for ourselves. And so this is a good catharsis and a good emotional therapy. So in the same article, Dr. Diana Raab also talks about unleashing our subconscious while writing poetry. And a quote from the article that I loved was when Dr. Raab quoted William Wordsworth when he defined poetry as the spontaneous overflow of feelings. It takes its origin from emotion, recollected in tranquility. And I think that's beautiful because writing poetry allows us to get inside of our own heads and to put our emotions out there in a way that any other form of writing or any other art form just can't do quite as well. And to kind of prove that point, there was another piece by Dr. Richard Bruce Hobby and his associates called Cathartic Poetry, Healing Through Narrative. And this whole piece and kind of research that Dr. Hobby and his associates did was about a man with chronic pain named Eugene Fage. And he's a chronic pain sufferer, and a way that he deals with his pain is by writing poetry. And so he has dozens of poems about his anguish and his ups and downs, and some days are good and some days are better, and it really allows him to express himself. And although he physically hurts, a lot of that mental and emotional anxiety that comes with the chronic pain gets to be put forth onto the pen and paper. And a quote from this article that I loved was, "The cathartic narrative or poem, when offered by the suffering person, is an innovation with encouragement to say, to write, or to artistically represent an interpretation of their suffering." And I think that's beautiful, It's somebody saying, I hurt, and this helps me. This is my medicine. and I would love for you to try some of my medicine because I hope that it'll help you. You know, it's a beautiful form of sympathy between one another. So writing poetry is not just a great way to improve our interactions with one another. You know, it's a great way to improve ourselves. And if you wish to improve yourself and, you know, maybe exercise your imagination, go write some poetry. And you don't need a good rhyme or a good specific rhythm. It doesn't have to be anything that somebody else is going to see. You know, if you're interested in, you know, bettering your imagination, get some pen, get some paper, write some poetry.